Well, hi, folks. My name is Stu Bamick, and we're in the middle of a Christmas series titled Anything is Possible, Christmas 2020. And my prayer for you and for me this Christmas is that anything is possible on the plus side of things, that God can visit with us, Emmanuel, be with us, that he can speak to us and touch us, and he's come to be known by us, and he's come to be heard by us, and he's come to reveal himself to us. And so I pray that this will be a great Advent season. Remember, that word Advent comes from the Latin word adventus. In the ancient days, when a king would visit a city, the whole town would pour out and greet this king. It was a time of great celebration and joy and anticipation that the king had come to this city. And around the 5th century, the church thought, that's not a bad idea. Why don't we do that? Why don't we have an Adventist season to celebrate the coming of our great King as he enters into this world, as he visits with us, and as he comes to us. And that Adventist season is marked by the color purple. As you'll recall, purple at Easter time, during the time of the cross. Purple is a time of suffering, but purple is also a time of royalty and of kingship. And so we have Adventus. It's the start of the arrival of this great King into your life and my life. Well, I want to begin by saying that by anybody's standards, having that firstborn child is a scary thing. The firstborn. You've never done anything like this before. Think of it, after a 9-month waiting period with trips to the doctors and sonograms, finally the contractions begin to set in. They increase over time. There's this call to the doctor. There's this rush to the hospital when he says, yeah, it's time to come in now. And you rush to that hospital and you get in there and the contractions continue to increase. And the next thing you know, you're holding this tiny little human being in your arms. And you'd wondered, would it breathe? Would it cry? Would it make noises? And it did. And I can remember my response was, who could but rejoice at so great a gift from the hand of God as the miracle of childbirth? It's one of the happiest days of a person's life. You get so excited, you call all your family and friends, and then there's those 2 or 3 days in the hospital, and then there's that trip home. Get in your own car, get the baby seat out. There's a real live little human being in that baby seat. Now there are 3 of you in the car, and you make your way home. You realize life is never going to be the same. That firstborn child is like running into a brick wall, isn't it? You wonder, what did I do with all of my free time? But it's a miracle. It's the miracle that God gives. It's the miracle of life itself. Now, once the child is born, you have to give that child a name. And people take names very seriously. If you think that giving a name to a pet turtle or a pet dog is a big deal, imagine giving a name to a human being that's going to have and hold that name for the rest of their life. In my case, before the child was born, we went online and researched names. You can find the Greek meaning of a name, a Latin meaning of a name, the most popular names in certain years or decades. And so you have to give that child a name. Now, if you think naming a pet turtle or a dog or a human being is a big deal, imagine giving a name to the very Son of God himself. And so the question becomes, who gave Jesus his name? And what does it mean? And why was he given that name in the first place? Well, fortunately, we have a doctor that lived during the time of Jesus, shortly after the time of Jesus, by the name of Luke, and he made an eyewitness visit to Mary to ask her about the details concerning the birth of this new child. Luke gives us a detailed description, as I said, of the birth of this child. And he writes these words in Luke chapter 1, verse 26. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to the city of Galilee, named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. Now, think about this for just a second. It had been 400 years since God had spoken or revealed himself to his people. It had been 400 years from the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi, to John's prophecies in the wilderness about the coming of this Messiah. We find in the Bible that many, many times God is silent He's silent in the lives of his people. He's silent in your life and in my life. In fact, most of the time, God is silent, but he's silent, but he's never still. In those 400 years, he was preparing the people of Israel to receive this child, and we'll see it in another message. He was preparing the whole world under the Roman government and Caesar Augustus as the fullness of time. The time was just ripe for the birth of this child. So it had been 400 years where God was working, but not visibly. It's the doctrine of the providence of God that beneath the surface of the visible world is the invisible hand of God. And what we see is not always what God is doing. We have to wait till he reveals that to him. That's why the scriptures tell us to walk by faith and not by sight, because our sight isn't always correct. So all of a sudden, after 400 years, an angel shows up. An angel. People often ask me, what does an angel look like? And my response is, well, I don't know. I've never seen an angel. I don't know what they look like. We can only speak of them in anthropomorphic terms, that is using human images or human analogies to understand something that is not human, that's beyond ourselves. It's a metaphor. It's like something, but we really can't describe what it actually is. And this angel shows up, and Luke names him. Mary said to Luke, now Luke, you're not going to believe this. When the angel showed up, it was the angel Gabriel. Well, that's very, very significant. There were three archangels in the Bible. The first of those is Gabriel. Gabriel always has the trumpet in his hand. He's the angel of good news. He heralds good news. When Gabriel shows up, this is going to be a good deal. Then there's Michael. Michael's the angel of judgment. He has a sword in his hand. When Michael shows up, it's a very, very bad deal. And then there's the angel Satan. He was the third archangel. He betrayed God, fell away from God. God cast him out from his kingdom. And he causes a lot of trouble in our world, a lot of trouble. That word Satan is a Hebrew term, Satanas in the Greek. It means the accuser, the adversary. Whenever you feel like you're accusing yourself or there's adversarial things going on in your lives, you can be sure that it's the work of this Satanas, this devil. And Mary says, and I was in Galilee. Galilee. Now that's another significant thing. Galilee is 70 miles from Jerusalem. 70 miles. Jerusalem is the seat of the Hebrew culture, of religion, of politics. Galilee is a backwater town. It's a nothing town. It's an absolutely nothing town, and absolutely nothing people live there. They're considered waste people by the culture of Jerusalem and by the hierarchy of the Hebrew people. Galilee, it's known for nothing. The people there are nothing. Luke continues in this eyewitness exchange with Mary when he writes in verse 28, and he came to her, the angel, and said, "Greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was greatly troubled at the saying and tried to discern what sort of greeting this might be. Greetings, O favored one. In the Greek, a more literal translation is greetings, O one who is favored with grace. A normal woman who is chosen by God to receive God's highest form of grace. Now, keep in mind that women in those days didn't have any real social or cultural or standing in the society other than to give birth. They were responsible for the inheritance. They were the bearers of the legacy. They were responsible for the survival of the family unit. The more children you had, the more likelihood the family would survive, and family was everything. So here is this 12, 13, 14-year-old girl, we're not really sure that she was of marriage age at that time, and she's living there in a veritable nowhere, Galilee. Her name is Mary. Up to this point, she's an absolute nothing. And I don't mean that to degrade her, but she's just not on anybody's list. She's betrothed to a man by the name of Joseph. He's another fellow that really doesn't have anything, is a nothing compared to the society of Jerusalem. They're nothing, except for their legacy, their lineage. It comes out of the line of Ruth and Boaz and Obed and Jesse. and King David. And when the angel arrives, she's trying to figure out what is going on. What did I do? What's happening? I've never experienced anything like this. I mean, sometimes when God unexpectedly arrives in our lives, at first glance, we have absolutely no idea what he is doing and what he's doing there and what he's going to do and why he's going to do that, which really makes this story really interesting. This story gets better and better. We read in Luke chapter 1, verse 30, these words, "And the angel said to her, 'Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus.'" An angel is standing there. And the angel says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the appearance or the arrival of the supernatural in your life. This angel Gabriel is there. When God unexpectedly intervenes in our lives, sometimes our first reaction is confusion. We're not really sure. Is this good news or is this bad news? This doesn't feel so good. This feels like a little bit like I'm walking in darkness and I don't know where this is headed. And I don't know how to plan for this. And I don't know what to do about this. But the angel says, don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. I love those words in the Bible. The same words the angel said at the resurrection of Jesus. Do not be afraid. Fear not. And maybe some of us need to hear that message this Christmas season. Fear not. No matter what the world looks like around us, God's hand is at work. His invisible hand is working through us and in us. Fear not. Now, again, what does this angel look like? I don't know. Angels look like angels. I don't know. But the angel's message to Mary is that you will conceive this child. You have been chosen by God, Mary. You've been chosen by God. And you will conceive through the Holy Spirit. And how did that happen? I don't know. But it did. This woman is going to receive this great, great gift. Chosen by God. Not volunteered, not elected, not appointed, but chosen. So Gabriel names the baby. That is, God names the baby through this messenger, through this heavenly messenger. You shall call his name Jesus. Yesu. Now, at first glance, we think that his name is Jesus Christ, but it's not. His name is Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth. Christ is a title. It's the Hebrew word Messiah. In the Greek, Christos, the anointed one. It is the title. It declares what his role is going to be in the history of salvation. But his name is Jesus. And if you were to look up a first century baby book of most popular names, you would see at the top of the list the name Jesus, Yesu. It's the Hebrew Yeshua, Joshua. His name really in Hebrew is Joshua. It's a popular name. It means God saves, God rescues, God redeems, God delivers. And in the Aramaic that was spoken in Galilee, it would have been Yesu. Yesu. His name, Mary, is Yesu. God saves. God saves. Now, when God, through Gabriel, said, you shall call his name Jesus, he's telling us a whole lot about who this person really is. He's telling us that Jesus is a person, that God is a person. You recall the Star Wars movies. George Lucas coined the phrase, may the force be with you. Some kind of abstract power, light and goodness as opposed to the dark side, the bad side. This all came out of George Lucas's understanding of New Age theology and philosophy of the 1960s. It was an energy field. You couldn't explain it. You didn't know who it is or what it is or how it works. It's a mystery. It was simply, may the force be with us, whatever that is. But when we look at Jesus, we see that God is not some impersonal force. He is a person. He's not some impersonal force that's never spoken or never been seen or ever done anything. Uh, Not a mystery, not some faceless power. Uh, he's a person. Look at me. You can see me. You can touch me. You can hear me. You can watch me. God is saying, I am coming to planet Earth in human form so you can see what I am like. I am becoming a human being, just like you. Jesus is the clearest expression of the character of God on this earth that we will ever see. The first actual creed of the church was Kyrios Jesus. Kyrios, ruler, king. Jesus, Jesus. Jesus is Lord. That was the real first creed of the church. Now that caused a big problem because Caesar Augustus said Caesar is Lord, and that caused the early followers of the way of Jesus to get into big trouble with the Roman Empire. But here God is trying to say, you shall call his name Jesus. All of life comes down to one question. Who is Jesus? It comes down to the undeniable claim that Jesus is not some cosmic idea or some unknown force, some mystery, but he is a person. God incarnate, Emmanuel, God come to be with us, to be known and seen and touched and heard. That this is God himself, and he is here with us. You know, I'm a big football fan, college and professional sports. Had a chance to go to a lot of great football games and watch a lot of them on the TV. And I'll wait for days to watch a really significant game. I get really excited about it, read up about it, get all the numbers and all the facts and all the players. But I can tell you this, that there's a big difference between watching a game on TV and being actually present at a football game. When you watch a game on TV, you're not actually there. You're receiving some signal through the airways, and you can see an image, but you're not at the game. But it's not the real thing. Well, God is trying to say through Jesus, this is it. Jesus is real. He is God incarnate. He has come to be with us. He is there. He is present for all to see. He is here full of God's grace, of my grace for you to see and know and touch and understand. I mean, this is the miracle of Christmas. John wrote in his gospel that Jesus said, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. When you see me, you see God. You're there. You see that God is a person. He's not some cosmic unknown force. God is a person. Not only is God a person, but the second thing the name Jesus teaches us is that he is accessible. I mean, he could have called him your royal highness, your majesty, the holy, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful God. But he didn't. He named him Jesus. As common a name as Joe or Tom or John or Jim. And this commonness suggests the availability of God to us, that he is approachable, that he is accessible. It's like my iPhone. You know, I have that iPhone, and I've got to plug in my little passcode to use it, or my fingerprint. Without that password or that fingerprint, I can't access my iPhone. But if I have the proper password, it opens up to me a whole new world. A whole universe is possible to me that I never had the opportunity to see before until I get inside that iPhone. And in a sense, it's a poor anthropomorphic metaphor. But Jesus is the password. He is the code that opens up this unlimited knowledge of the nature and the character and the person of God. And he says, God is accessible to you. Some people think that God is distant and far removed and far away from our world and detached. But the name Jesus says, no. He is God come to be known. He is accessible. He is available. Hey, he is approachable by you and by me. this Christmas season, anything is possible. Christmas 2020. In this time, and it's been a difficult time. It is a difficult time. It continues to be a difficult time. I want you to know that God is approachable, accessible. I want you to know that God loves to hear from you. You know, my kids have instant, immediate access to me, no matter how busy I am. When I hear them call, I'll drop just about anything to hear their words and hear their voice and to talk with them and hear their concerns. I love it when my kids share their troubles, their problems, when they're stuck. And God's like that. Anything is possible this Christmas 2020. Approach him, talk to him. Jesus said, when you pray to him as my Father, my Daddy, one who loves me. And there may be some things that you may need to chat about with God this very moment. I know I have some. Bring them to him. Well, we have special access. He's approachable. His name is Jesus. He's a person and he's approachable. He's accessible. And there's a third thing about him, and that is this, that he is highly relational. Our God is highly relational when he names his son Jesus. One of the things that I most enjoyed as my kids were growing up is that once a year I'd take each one of them individually to the Art and History Museum. And we'd spend a day there. We'd start off with the great art. And we'd talk about the difference between Romanticism and Baroque art and modern art, Impressionism, Expressionism. They'd get to know the painters and why they painted that way. It was really fun. I loved watching them grow over the years until finally they would say, oh, that's a Stuart Davis, or that's a Rouault, or that's a Picasso, or that's a Rembrandt. To know the difference. I just delighted in watching them grow. I delighted in being present with them in the moments of their growth, and God delights in being present with us in our moments of growth because he's a highly relational God. How many times have you heard me say, why did God create us? Because God loves relationship. And he loves to have a relationship with you and me. And he wants to be a part of the richness of that relationship and appreciate the understanding of the depth of who we are and an understanding of the depth of who God is. God's highly relational. This Christmas, he names him Jesus. He says, I want to have relationship with you. You're created for that. Relationship. This relational aspect of God is the wonder of Christmas. Jesus is God's attempt to tell any and all who will listen that no matter where you find yourself or what the status of your life, that I want to be near to you and close to you and walk with you. Emmanuel, I want to have a personal relationship with you, and I want to do that right now. And when we understand how much we matter to God, how much we're watched over and understood and protected, when we know those kinds of things, our self-esteem grows. And we have this sense of security about us, and it deepens, and the whole atmosphere of our lives change. And it's that kind of message that we celebrate in this Adventist season. So as great a miracle is that Jesus would leave the majesty and the glory of heaven for the dirt and the dust of a stable. The greatest miracle of all is that he is still ready, willing, and able to have a personal relationship with you and me this Christmas 2020. Anything is possible. And I'm praying that this Christmas, God would unexpectedly visit your life as Gabriel unexpectedly visited Mary's life, and walk with you and talk with you and listen to you and be heard by you. And that you could know our God and have a relationship with him in a way and in a power that you've never known before. I'm praying that this Christmas anything is possible. That you might open our hearts, you and I, and we might say, you mean all of this is just for me? All of this is just for me? And God says, yeah, yes it is. It's just for you. His name is Jesus. You shall call him Jesus.